Or an avid consumer of all things Tucker Carlson. For several months now, there's been no avoiding the subject of Nick Fuentes.
All right, we're skipping that crap. Dude, there is no way we're watching the whole two hours.
Where you often come across as having, you know, a very unreasonable view on things. This is what Coleman Hughes said about you.
Nick Fuentes knows exactly what he's doing.
Dude, I don't even know who this person is. I don't care. Let's see. Claims, yeah, we're going to just skip that part. Skip that part.
Who is Nick Fuentes? Tell me about your
There we go.
I know
That's all we care about.
The suburbs of Chicago. Tell me about your early years.
He's got to go to Walmart. Well, hey, I appreciate you tuning in, Bruce. He's got to go to Walmart.
Really, how? Like my childhood or a little bit later?
Yeah, your childhood, yeah.
Well, I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago in LaGrange Park, as you say. My parents are ethnics. You know, my father's half Mexican, half Irish. My mother's Italian. And they both came from a pretty rough upbringing themselves. They both were raised by single mothers, not because of divorce, but because both of their fathers had died. They endured a lot of dysfunction. And I think that's one of the reasons they came together and they related to each other and they wanted to create a normal upbringing for their children. They wanted to have a normal family life. And so they moved out to LaGrange Park away from the city. And they raised me and my sister and really put us first. I think that's a big reason why I tend to have a lot of these family values or Christian values. My mother quit her job and stayed at home to raise us. And so I have a very close relationship with my parents, with my sister. We're a very tight family. And we grew up in a pretty idyllic town. And maybe we can sort of get into a conversation about politics from this. I loved my upbringing. My mom stayed at home. My dad was working. We're in a mostly white suburb in Chicago. I was maybe half Catholic, half Protestant. It was a baseball town. I played baseball for many years. In Chicago, we love our hot dogs. We have our baseball parade and get a hot dog. And so I love where I came from. I love the city. It's a working class city. I love the people here. They're very good, humble, down to earth, decent people. And I guess I had my political, not to jump ahead, but this is a big part of where my political awakening came from. I sort of left this bubble, if you could call it that. When I went to college in 2016, I went to Boston University. And I read a lot of things online.
He was like a big liberal at first. We already know who Nick Fuentes is. He basically had this upbringing. I'm going to explain it. I'll explain it here so to give people context. Basically, Nick has been brought up from a liberal side, and he was a huge liberal. And then when 2016 came around, he started watching some of Trump's speeches and thinking about things a little deeper. And then he realized it was like, okay, maybe we need to switch over to the other side. And he started switching over to the other side, and he realized, you know, about the juice boxes, what was going on. And he tried to speak his truth, but he just kept getting censored and backlash and canceled, etc., taken off, put on the no-fly list. And he's been just such a good speaker. Uses the hand movements, everything he does, he has like this tonality to him where he can get his debate effectively and communicate effectively. And so that's who Nick Fuentes is, so we don't have to stick around for the entire 2-hour interview. Moving on to Morgan asked Nick something.
You said this. We're looping. You said this already.
But you haven't really directly...
We're going to go back.
And they would be having dinner in the projects, and there'd be so much chaos and dysfunction and disagreement and fighting. And she would look across the way out the window at a black family in the other apartment, and they'd be holding hands around the table saying grace. And this is sort of the culture that used to prevail. But now what you have in the city is that there's no accountability for the black people. And now Chicago has become a complete dump because these teenagers go out and they take over the city. They call them teen takeovers. That's the euphemism for it. They're teenagers. But they all come from the same neighborhood. They drive up there and they mug people and attack people and they destroy cars and destroy shops. We had the Festival of Lights a couple of weeks ago. It's supposed to be a family event. And they light up the trees and they, you know, there's a big parade. I was in the parade one year and you had a bunch of black people there shooting each other. 7 people shot, a 14-year-old killed in the Magnificent Mile. And I know there's a lot of black people that feel the same way about this. They say, we've lost control of the city. And we're looking for accountability. We have a lot of black people that are always outraged about racism, outraged about attitudes from white people, but they're never ashamed of some of these behaviors, never ashamed of some of the things that go on. And that's why I think there's a lot of negative attitudes these days. And so You know, again, I think those attitudes, you say I'm a product of my environment. I am. And so are my parents and my grandparents. Unlike you, because you're not even American, in Chicago, we have to live in a big, diverse city where there's a lot of different kinds of people. And I think anybody in Chicago would tell you the same.
I live in London. It's one of the biggest and most diverse cities in the world.
But it's not the same.
Well, actually, it's a big diverse city. The only difference is we don't have the gun violence because we don't have guns. That's a whole different story. I don't want to get into that with you.
Well, why wouldn't you want to get into that? It's a good point to get into.
You got a knife problem. You got sword
Yeah.
problems.
We have problems
You
with
have Aladdin.
We have problems with violent crime. I make no pretense of it. So the idea that somehow I'm cosseted in London because I'm not in Chicago.
I didn't say that.
Well, you kind of implied it, but I guess my point about the environment, I'm not saying you are a product of your environment. I'm saying most people are in some capacity. When I read that anecdote, which just to remind you, it's not something I have put out there. You told this story, right? And you said that
you said this. We're looping. You said this already.
But you haven't really directly, I think, responded to it, which is whether your father would not take you to certain restaurant chains because he associated them with black Americans. Is that true?
He's trying to pin him up into a corner.
See here, if you're in America, you would say that Olive Garden is not real Italian food. Applebee's, TGI Fridays, and stuff.
Dude, I have this debate always with people in the Discord. They are like, oh my gosh, burritos? They're not Mexican. Or what's the chimichangas? That was made in America. And like, I'm just like, bro, well then why did the Mexicans adopt it after the fact? Why are they now making chimichangas in Mexico? Why are they now making the deep fried burritos or rolled tacos or whatever? Now why are they making them there? So, and then you can only get them at Mexican food places. Yeah, I'm just saying. We change the culture. We have impacts on cultures.
It's a load of crap. My dad was just a food snob, but no, it's got nothing to do with that. My best friend in first grade was a black guy. We're not a racist family. So
same here.
When you told the story, I'm just
same here. Everybody. Oh my gosh, dude! Shout out Ron. He was on the podcast, and like majority of the people that were on my podcast were black, by the way, because they're like, I had people calling me, why are most of the people on your podcast, why are they black? And it's because I got black friends. Most of them aren't bad, but there's majority of them. Well, let me correct myself. Majority of them could get violent. They rob stores because they were raised in the wrong environment, and that's a problem. But the ones that I know, they realize that that's a problem, and I don't know how we deal with it right now. I'd like to know.
So when you told that anecdote, which clearly on the face of it is racist, right? You're basically saying your father made racist decisions about where you would go as a family to eat. Are you saying, well, I'm just going to ask you a question. Are you saying that when you told that story, you didn't mean to infer that he was racist? And do you understand why when somebody like me reads that anecdote for the first time, as I did this week, I reach a different conclusion?
Well, I understand what you're doing, which is a sort of making of a murderer. How did he become racist? Well, his father didn't.
Jim, wait, Jim's in here? Yo, Jim, it's been a while, bro. How we doing?
Literally reading out.
Because he said that's not real Italian food. Hang on, can I? What's with the interruptions? Can I explain?
Yo, we're reacting to this debate right now. It's like it went crazy viral on Twitter. Did you see this?
Of something you said on your show, which led me to conclude a certain thing. If I'm wrong, tell me.
Yeah, it was said in jest as a humorous anecdote, and now you're trying to spin it into a narrative, which is his parents are racist. He comes from a long line of racists, and I think everybody knows our parents.
Who's the guy on the right? His name's Nick Fuentes. He's been like blowing up lately. He was on like the Tucker Carlson. He's been like on Aiden Ross's stream. A bunch of different places he's been popping up.
Parents are boomers. And these people come, well, you're a boomer, I guess, too, in a way,
60.
right? You were born in what, 19? Yeah, so you're a boomer also. Or maybe you're a Gen Xer, I suppose it's sort of on the cusp. But it's a humorous anecdote. These are kind of the attitudes of baby boomers in society, but you're trying to spin it into a narrative, which is you're a product of your environment, your dad's racist because of this joke, now you're a racist, and I don't think that's a fair characterization.
Okay. People can make their own minds up. They can go back and listen to you say it. I mean, the beauty of what I'm going to talk to you about in this interview is that almost all of it is just going to be reminding you what you have said and asking you what you meant. Your position about
trying to pin him into a corner.
That it was a joke. Okay.
And that's one thing that he's super good about doing. He's like able to slide out of all of these corners super effectively. And he says, "Gotcha. Heard the name. Sounds like he listens to a lot of Ben Shapiro." By the way, he uses his words. In his upbringing, he did, but then he got some backlash from Ben Shapiro. That's what he described at the beginning. He was like, I tried to work with Ben Shapiro. I listened to him. I liked his debates, and then he like slandered him on Twitter for talking about, I think it was like the Jewish people.
Come to something else you said. This is where you talked about Jews, women, and blacks. Let's just take a listen.
They're always coming up with, no, it's not the Jews. No, it's not women. No, it's not blacks. It's actually really complicated. No, it fucking isn't at all. Jews are running society. Women need to shut the fuck up. Blacks need to be imprisoned for the most part. And we would live in paradise. It's that simple.
Okay.
It's a crazy take for most normal people.
Would you like to clarify what you meant there?
All true.
It's all true.
Everything I said in that clip is
double down.
That,
yes, I like
blacks
it.
Need to be imprisoned for the most part.
Yeah. Yes.
All of them?
No, for the most part.
What does the most part mean? What percentage of American blacks would you like to see in prison?
Whatever the percentages of the murderers. I think it's 1 in 20 black men will commit a murder in their lifetime. So maybe let's say that 5%.
Oh, so you're talking about black people who murder people?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But you didn't say that.
That's
You just said
problem.
blacks need to be imprisoned for the most part.
Well, you didn't listen to the whole clip. You played a 10-second snippet of it that went viral. This guy, oh my gosh.
You didn't clarify that you were talking about black murderers.
Right. No, you're right. That's a good addition to that.
That's a great addition to that.
Funny, or?
Yeah, I do. I think it's hilarious. I think it's totally true.
Do you think a black American would find it funny? You think that blacks should be imprisoned for the most part?
Blacks are my biggest fans. I get high fives all the time. They say, Nick Fuentes, I love your show. They agree with me. And you want to know why? Here's the difference. Black people are the most victimized by other black people. You think black people want to live in the hood and the ghetto and get shot all the time? That's what happens in the south side of Chicago. You should come here. I'll take you there. We could go to Garfield Park.
My son went to Chicago University for a year, actually, several years ago.
Yeah, that's a bubble. That's a bubble. You think you're in Chicago at Hyde Park? You don't know Chicago. Go a little bit west. See what it's like over there. And I'll tell you, black people agree with me because they're tired of it too. And maybe not most of them, but a lot of them agree with what I say about that because they know how it is. That's why the first thing they do when they make a little bit of money is they go and leave to another neighborhood.
Okay, so what was it? Just remind me again, the percentage of black men who commit murder in America.
Is he wrong? Is he wrong? I don't know. I'd like to know your take on it, Jim.
Okay, what was the percentage you gave me?
It's 1 in 20. 1 in 20.
It's 1 in 100.
No, it's 1 in 20.
No. Less than 1 in 100 black U.S. men.
Blacks have always been oppressed by being uneducated. Well, like uneducated because of what reason? Just because they have bad schools, or they don't want to go. They don't show up to school, or I don't know. Maybe they talk about that in here. That'd be interesting.
Commit murder. That's the most.
Schools in reality.
Up-to-date crime statistics in America.
That's not true. I've seen other statistics. They say 1 in 20 will eventually commit a murder.
So your rate means that you're saying that 5 times as many black men commit murder as the official crime statistics say.
Yeah, there's a report.
He's lived in the hood. Well, like, do you actually see that? That's what I'm curious to. I mean, I'd say that I live in a area that isn't the best. I mean, you know, the other day I woke up and I looked out my window. There was like a guy climbed on my neighbor's roof, and he was getting arrested on the roof. Besides the point, right? You don't actually see like majority of these people like. Well, I guess maybe you don't know them on a personal level, like trying to get out, right? And if you really wanted something, then I think most people would go for it. But then they would say, oh, well, they're uneducated. And so if they're uneducated, how do you expect them to want to like get out and work harder? A lot of crime around me is from illegals. A lot of crime around you, like, isn't ICE cracking down?
I believe on X by Data Hazard. I'll have to go and double check that for you. But yes, there's some pretty shocking evidence that says that it's far more alarming than you would think.
Okay, but you would accept that the official crime statistics are 1 in 100, or you wouldn't accept that statistic?
I don't know. I don't have it in front of me, but I've seen other evidence. Like I said, Data
Well,
Hazard
he has like
X,
a whole
I believe,
research team,
about
doesn't
a year
he?
ago, it said 1 in 20.
True.
But I mean, whether it's 1 in 20 or 1 in 100, that's a lot of people, Piers. I mean,
Sure,
this is
a lot of white
problem.
people commit murder too. Well, they do, don't they?
Okay, but it's about proportionality. I mean, white people are 65% of the population, blacks are 13%. And I think anybody would tell you that more black people proportionally commit violent crime than white people, and people vote with their feet. People would rather pay a much higher price.
I'd like to know what percent of that is. Let's look that up. Maybe we could go over here. Let's go over here, new chat. Percent. What percent of the U.S. is illegals? Let's see. I'm curious. Maybe it's gonna give us a biased answer because it's Google. Maybe we have to go over to X. I don't know. I personally realize like ChatGPT and Google have been giving me a lot of like, oh, you can't do that. You can't do it. 14 million. The estimated population will reach 14 million, which is 4.1% of it. Probably about 10% of our population is illegals. Report. This says. Well, yeah, I'd think that it probably went up to around 10% because if we look at this graph or we look at these statistics, it was 3.3% and then it went up to 4.1%. And unauthorized immigrants account for about 27% of the foreign-born people in the U.S. So the top states that they go to is California, Texas, Florida, New York. New York, I do see a lot of that. Like, I remember they were kicking kids out of school because they wanted to use their place for putting illegal. Yeah, that's huge. That's a lot more. So 27 compared to 13% people. Yeah, that's a big gap. I don't really see illegals committing too much crime though. Massachusetts is buying old hotels to. Is that where you're from?
Property tax.
Most mass
what's with the
shootings.
interruptions?
I'm sorry.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You know, you look at in Chicago, in New York, these neighborhoods are so stratified. People would rather pay a high tax rate. They'd rather pay a much higher property value to live in a less diverse, less black neighborhood because they don't want to live around the violence. And I think that when you look at even on the public.
You're in Boston, more Hispanics than any race now? That's right, you're in Boston. I remember you telling me that. That's Boston having. Oh no, New Jersey is what I'm thinking about because New Jersey is like always competing for the richest state. I don't know much about Boston. I know that they got like Boston accents, right? That's really it. I'd be curious to see like either a documentary or go there for myself. Very liberal here. It sucks. I feel bad for you, bro. I'd say that I'm in a normal area when it comes to people, and like it's rare to see like people that identify with weird pronouns and stuff like that and like are actually gay and or trans. And I went downtown the other day. And I actually ran into like my first trans person, but like I can usually spot them from a mile away. And I had to actually have a full-blown conversation, and I was like, hey, how's it going? Because you're like networking, you're at a networking event, and you see like the Adam's apple sticking out of somebody. Yeah. And you're just like, oh, okay, yeah. But either way, I'm sure that person gets that all the time. But here I just never see that. Like in this suburb weird hood area.
Transit.
I don't know if it even qualifies as hood. What technifies as a hood? Like, could we define that right now? Hood definition. A hoodlum or thug. a rowdy or violent young person. So there's a bunch of like rowdy or okay. Carriage top, a metal cover. No, I don't care about those. So a neighborhood, usually in the inner city. It doesn't even say like. It doesn't even say like a bad, well, I guess a rowdy or violent young person. So does it combine these two definitions? Let's see. Dude, I don't like not having notifications anymore. Okay, we're good. All right. He said trans is a mental illness that stems from trauma. Yeah, well, if you think about it, how there was like this New York parade back in 2024. And in 2024, they were like roaming down the street, right? This entire parade, they were, maybe I could play the clip for you. They were like, we're here, we're queer, we're coming for your children. And it's a very true statement because how do gay, trans, all of those people, how do they become that? Well, majority of the time it's because they either had like an uncle that touched them. It was like their first experience. They had a rough upbringing. Stuff like that is most gay people actually hate trans people too. I didn't know that. I mean, I do know that most like normal gay people hate a lot of the ones that are like outspoken and doing like the pride parades, because that's what we see. We're queer. We're here. Queer. And coming for children. Video? Yeah, here it is. Like, the fact that they think that that's okay is just, it's crazy to me.
The blue line, you know, people don't want to go there because they know who occupies and menaces the public transit. It is these people like Daniel Penny had to deal with. It's people like Irina Zarutska had to deal with. And that's just the uncomfortable reality.
You've also said you don't want to live near black people. Let's take a listen to this clip.
I'm a new generation of white person. I'm not living around blacks. Sorry. You know, I want white kids, and I don't want my white kids bringing home black people to marry. It's racial for me. And call me racist. Oh, very Christian of you. I don't give a fuck.
That's
I mean, couldn't be clearer,
that's
really.
fair.
Hey,
it's fair.
Another of your jokes, but you're
same thing with me.
Saying, yeah, I'm a racist.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
You're fine with saying you're a racist?
Totally. I think everybody's racist. I think everybody, if we're being honest, is racist. I think everybody, the only people that aren't racist or pretend not to be are white people to their detriment. Everybody else is racist.
But earlier in the interview, you got aggrieved at the idea that your father was a racist. You wanted to make emphatically
because
sure
my father's.
He's not.
Because my father doesn't share my same views on that.
So he's the exception to everyone's a racist.
Well, everybody's a little bit racist. You're right. So maybe everybody. The difference is you're attacking my father. You know, he can get fired from his job.
I'm not attacking your father.
You are.
No, I'm not. I don't know your father. And to be clear, I have no knowledge about him at all. Well,
then let's leave him out of it. Let's leave him out of it if you don't know him.
Hang on, Nick. You put that story into the public domain on your show. I'm simply reminding you of what you told everybody, millions of people, about your father.
Yeah, I don't want people. I don't want people like, you know, talking about my job. I don't want people talking about my family when politics comes up too. I agree with them.
If you now want to retract it, fine. If you want to say it was a joke, which is what your position was earlier, fine. But I'm allowed to put to you things you've said publicly. That's not unfair. That's not me targeting your father. You put that story about him out there.
You know what you're doing. You know what you're doing.
I'm asking you about a pretty shocking anecdote, which to me looked like you were saying your father made decisions about where you as a family would eat based on skin color of people who worked at these places. If you say, or use them, if you say that is not what you meant, That's fine. You can respond any way you like. But the idea I can't ask you about it without you saying I'm attacking your father is ridiculous.
Well, you are, and you know what you're doing. And there's a political culture in America where if you have the wrong views, you get fired from your job. And my father has a job. And if you go on here and say, you charge him with racism or something, and I'm put in a position where I don't look like I'm sticking to my guns if I don't say my father's a racist, you're putting him in jeopardy, and he's not here to defend himself or explain his views. And it's very low, and I think you know exactly what you're doing, and people can see what you're doing. I'll defend my views, and I think that, so let's leave him out of it. Let's just not talk about my father, because my father isn't here. I'm here.
Okay, well, then do you accept that you shouldn't talk? Okay,
listen,
that's fine. But then do you accept you shouldn't talk about your father on your show? And you shouldn't tell...
Absolutely not. Absolutely
not.
So
it's fine for you to put a story out there which would make most people who listen to that story...
Why is he trying to control, like, what he... Dude, he doesn't want to talk about his dad. Like, okay, come on, Piers. This is what he does. He just pins people into these corners. I'm uncensored. Like, hey, mate. I'm uncensored.
Watched it at the time on your show, conclude that he was racist. It's fine for you to do that, but if I then ask you about it, I'm the one who's being unfair and I've crossed a line. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you're being malicious.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Listen, people are watching this live. They can draw their own conclusions about whether what I just did.
And they will.
Yeah, and I'm sure afterwards, by the way, you'll say, he ambushed me with your own words.
Whoa.
With your own words.
That's a little presumptuous. I'm not going to say it's an ambush, but I think that's a low blow. And I think you know what you're doing.
See, there is somebody, like, he has a whole research team, like, behind him. I remember when he went on to, like, Ye came on, when Ye and Sneeko, they went on for that interview, and he has this whole research team behind him, and they're literally sitting there, researching it, and he, like, tells Ye, oh, you have, like, 20 million followers on Twitter or some stupid crap. And he was like, that's not the correct number. Pull up the right number. And research team refused to pull up the real number.
And that's fine. You're a tabloid journalist. I expected that. I don't think it's an ambush because I knew it would be like this. And people will see what you're doing, and I think they'll say it's low. But as far as you want to talk about racism,
I do.
Let's talk about racism.
Okay,
let's leave my dad out of it.
Look, you've admitted you're a racist, correct?
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
Own it.
Okay, that's fine. You're
Own
perfectly
it.
entitled.
Double down.
In a free
there we go.
society to stare down the barrel of his camera and tell me you're a racist. People can judge you accordingly. Many people who have assumed that you're racist will now have heard it from your own lips. That's fine.
There you go.
That's the point. The point of this interview.
And, like, that's the crazy part now, is even white chicks, like, if you were to, like, go and say that you're a racist a few years back, like, chicks would be like, ew, that's gross. I don't want to be around that guy. But now, dude, I was literally I was sitting in the coffee shop yesterday, and there was some that, like, I think there was a gay couple, or I don't know. There was some couple that walked in, and they literally started just, I'm not gonna say it on Twitch, but they were giving them the gay slur. It was like, bro, I was like, oh my gosh, marry me. No.
View is to go over the things you've said, which have led people to reach conclusions about you, and to ascertain whether those conclusions are fair and reasonable or
Land
not.
the plane.
That's it. I want to play you another clip. This is what you talk about why white people are justified in being racist. Let's take a listen to this.
First, white people are every single bit justified in being racist. Every single bit justified, to the extent that means going out of your way to avoid black people when you see them.
You stand by that?
Absolutely.
I like how he just stands by every single one. Stream
white people should go out of their way to avoid black people when they see them.
Absolutely. They would be wise.
Why?
Because it's a lose-lose proposition. If you're Irina Zarutska and you don't walk the other way, you get stabbed to death and you die. If you're somebody else and you walk on the subway and you stand near a black person or something, maybe it's fine. It's a lose-lose proposition. So no, I think that white people have been beaten into submission, that we're afraid to tell the truth about it. And the truth is that when you go into these major cities like New York or Chicago, I believe she was in North Carolina, there is a menace, which is young, black, adolescent men. They're extremely violent. And we have been told that we have to pretend like they are every other person. We have to be colorblind to that. And we're supposed to go and be in the midst of all this danger. And I think that at this point, it's gotten out of control. You look at the BLM movement, they said that the reason that black people, are violent, or the reason there's crime, is because of police brutality, redlining, or all these other things. They said we need to get rid of the police. We need to defund them. And a lot of cities did. A lot of cities like Chicago, for example, the police changed the rules of engagement. They don't chase them. It's not a felony if you steal a certain amount of merchandise. They won't chase them on foot. And now the city's totally up for grabs. And now whether you're in the Gold Coast, or whether you're on the Mag Mile, or you're in the worst neighborhoods in the city, you might get shot, you might get mugged, someone might run up on you. And I tell my followers, it is better.
And people will say this, oh, you shouldn't judge people, like, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. But I think judging is just within us, like, naturally. Is that the correct word? Yeah, it's the correct word. I think it's within us naturally. Like, you see somebody, like, with his hood up across the street, you're just kind of like, okay, I'm going to take my children the opposite direction. I don't want to be that. It just seems like trouble. That guy seems like trouble, and you judged him. That's judgment.
To be perceived as racist or racist and walk the other way and maybe keep your life than to say, I'm a good anti-racist. I don't mind that this person's making me uncomfortable. Maybe he's looking a little froggy. I'm going to sit down because I'm a good person, and get stabbed, mugged, whatever. And by the way, this is a strategy. They call it the friendly stranger. There's a crew of them. They do this in Chicago. They stand outside bars, black people. They approach strangers. It's a robbery crew. And they pretend to be a friendly stranger, and then they mug them. And stupid white people say, oh, hi, yeah, nice to meet you. They grin, they laugh, they put up with the nonsense, and then they get mugged, or worse. Sometimes they get executed. And so as a white person...
How do you feel about mass shootings at school?
I think they're bad.
Who do you think commits them?
Let's see. He says, racism is just fear. Well, there's different types of, like, racism, right? Because people are just like, I don't know. How do I describe this? Let me think of how I can articulate this perfectly. Okay. So, when you're just chilling with the homies, right? You got, like, your black friend with you, you got your Asian friend with you, and, like, you guys are hanging out, and, you say some racist stuff, they call you a crackerback, whatever, right? People would say that's racist. I don't think that's actually racist. And most people would be like, oh, you shouldn't say that because it is racist. But then you have other racist things where it's just like, you just actually want to, I mean, like, let's say, like, the KKK. Like, you want to be like the KKK and, like, burn black people. And that's what I think should be defined as racist. And what is the definition of racism? It's hatred towards another race. But there's just locker room talk, and then there's, well, why did the KKK you might be onto something. Why do the KKK members not like black people? Because they fear them? Racism is the fear of the other color without admitting you're afraid or jealous. Blacks are very racist because they think they've been ridiculed for years. So they just have the victim mindset then. The government created this separation. Was it the government, or was it a foreign nation that controls the media? Ooh, that's where we get deep. That's where we get deep.
The vast majority of the mass shootings.
I'm sure it's white people.
Right. So how do you feel about that?
I think that white people do more antisocial violence. I think black people participate in more gang violence. I think that's a difference.
What's the difference to the victims?
There's no difference to the victim, but it's a different kind of crime, and it's a different proportion also. Do you know what percentage of white people are school shooters?
I know that the vast majority of mass shootings in schools in America this century were perpetrated by young white men. And I'm
what proportion?
I'm curious whether your advice would
I like his face right now. Jim says exactly, and white people have been blaming the blacks to keep them lesser. Black human beings are literally better at every single thing on Earth than any other race when in shape and well educated, which is true. And they have, like, higher testosterone and everything. So maybe we're just afraid of them like taking over. I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's probably just the fear of them being taking over. Well, but then you're also like, you think about it in the back of your head, and as a man, this is just how I think. Maybe other people think differently, but if I had a kid with a black chick, right? It would probably come out black, and I don't want that because then it's not going to look like me. And so if my daughter, if I had a white wife and then a white daughter, and she got married to a black guy, right? Then they're not going to look like me. That's the only thing I fear is I just want my family to look like me, right? Because then I know that I'm going to, for generations, it's going to keep going and going and going. Then you're like, oh, well, why don't you just have a boy? Well, then that boy might get married to a black chick. Let's see. He says, that's what it is. Same with the Jews versus Christians. Jews will always make Christians look like the wrong ones. Well, not necessarily, because I mean, I'm not a biblical. I don't know what you call that, biblical reciter, biblical scholar. There we go. That's the word I'm looking. Scholar. I'm not a biblical scholar, but I thought they were given so many chances throughout the Bible to prove themselves, and they always chose their own people because within their own religion, they just can't bow down to to God, and they never would. And yeah, that's all I really know. But I could be wrong. I'm just going off minimal knowledge. Yeah.
Who have kids in
Wait,
these
is my
schools?
mic working?
Let's see. Are Jew? I'm looking this up now. Are Jews always talked down upon towards Muslims? I mean, oh, towards Muslims. Well, but like Muslims are different though. Like majority of the Muslims, I'm not like a Muslim hater, but it's like, how do I describe it? From what maybe it's just been portrayed this way. World War II is such bull. Hitler was being invaded. He was just wrong. He just went about it the wrong way. Yeah, he did. He did. The short is no, absolutely not. In fact, the majority of the Bible, the Jews, the protagonists, however, are the heroes. Yeah, okay, so yeah, majority of the Bible is about the Jewish people and how they should, quote-unquote, love each other. Okay. And what did he say? What I was talking about Muslims. Let me take on Muslims. So Muslims, majority of Muslims, they watch gay porn. They talk about having sex with minors. And I think like their prophet did. Again, not a scholar, just got the minimal knowledge. And they have like this Sharia law where basically if you don't have the freedom to, or not Sharia law, in their Bible, or in their Quran, sorry, they talk about how if you become a Muslim, and then you were like, you find out that, oh, I don't believe in this anymore, you have to then be killed. World War II, a Jew wrote that. Yeah, a Jew wrote that. Fair.
Should they avoid white people at school? Should people with the kids at school avoid young white men at school?
No.
Okay.
Do you know what per capita means? Do you know proportionality? There are more black people proportionally that engage in violent crime or are involved in gangs, especially in these major cities, than there are white people that are school shooters. compared to the entire white population, and everybody understands that.
Two-thirds of mass shootings at school perpetrated by white people.
But what proportion of white men commit school shootings? That's a question.
I've just told you. It's 60-65% of school shootings by white people.
You're telling me what proportion of school shootings are committed by white people. I'm saying what proportion of white people have committed school shootings. Are you playing dumb, or are you just not that smart?
What difference does that make to the children?
Gotcha. And this interview is actually just so good because everybody, like, he can slither out of these corners that Piers tries to put him in. And he's just an excellent conversating and debating that Piers can't pin him down.
See,
and it's not turned into a yelling match.
The difference is you're asking, would you fear white people or black people? And that's the difference. The difference is
what I'm saying to you is by your logic, if we now have agreed that the vast majority of mass shootings in schools are committed by white people and predominantly young white men, then presumably your advice would be to avoid young white men because they perpetrate these massacres. But it won't be because they're white, right?
So are you playing dumb or are you actually dumb?
Maybe
it's
I'm
about
dumb.
proportionality.
Maybe I'm dumb.
You are because you're, well, I don't think you are dumb. I think you're smart actually, but you're deliberately avoiding per capita. And everybody knows that's the difference. What proportion of white men are school shooters? It's probably 0.00001%. What proportion of black men have committed violent crimes? It's probably like 5%. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but it's very high. And I would add to that, even as it concerns schools, why do you think parents pay a super high property tax to live in a school district where there's white people? Because they know that if they go to...
Do you watch a lot of Ben Shapiro? I personally don't like Ben Shapiro, but I like Nick. I think he's the fact of his like backstory. He's been canceled. Used to listen to him a lot. I used to listen to a lot of Ben Shapiro. Yeah, I did too, but I couldn't stand his voice. And the problem with Ben is he's too one-sided. He didn't want to talk about the Jewish problem, right? This guy does. This guy got his whole career canceled because he wanted to get the answer about, you know, the Jewish question about World War II, and he just doesn't care what he doesn't care. He just doesn't care.
The black school, it's going to be the Bloods and the Crips. It's going to be gangs. It's going to be, you know, you talk about school shootings. Nobody talks about all the school shootings that are committed by gangbangers.
What do I mean by he doesn't care? He doesn't, he's not afraid to say certain words.
And around the school and all the other violence that's associated with that. I mean, these schools in the south side of Chicago, you know, it's just not
I have an answer for you, Nick. So the proportion of the population who carry out mass shootings is actually the same. For black and white.
For white people, the proportion of
the proportion
again,
of the population.
are you hearing it? No.
I think the trouble with your statistics is a lot of them don't bear much scrutiny. We have a bunch of fact checkers checking all this in real time because you do have a tendency to just come out with a lot of old baloney. And when you say, you know, well, it's true. And when you're confronted with reality, you don't like it.
What's the figure? What proportion of white people have committed school shootings? With white people as the denominator and white people that have committed school shootings as the numerator, what's that percentage?
For both black and whites, the proportion of the population who carry out mass shootings generally is about the same.
No. Tell me the number, and then
yet, the only focus of your attention is the black shootings, the black crime. You don't want to live around black people. You want to avoid black people. You don't want interracial marriages or relationships that may produce black people. And yet, when I point out to you that there are many parts of crime in America where actually there's a majority of white people that perpetrate them, you don't care. You don't have any interest in that. It doesn't exercise your mind. Maybe
no one's buying this. This argument lost. No one is buying this. Everybody understands per capita, and people can even see what you race ahead and say, well, we're comparing the proportion of white and black school shooters. I said, no, compare the proportion of school shooters that are white versus violent criminals that are black, because that was the basis of the monologue.
And this goes back to what we were saying earlier about, like, everybody wants to, you know, keep producing their own race, right? And when everybody wants to keep producing their own race, I think you see this in real time in prison. I haven't been to prison, but I know how this is because I've talked to numerous people that have been. And in prison, it's kind of like diverse, right? You have the blacks that hang out over here. You have the Mexicans that hang out over here. You have the whites that hang out over here. Then the Asians, right? And they're all defending their own race in prison. Like if a prison fight happens, they're all going to fight they're going to fight the whites, the Asians are going to fight the whites, the blacks are going to fight the Hispanics, etc., etc.
Is that you're very likely, if you encounter black people or a young black man in the city, that you're going to be the victim of a violent crime, of a robbery, a mugging, a car theft, a carjacking, or a murder. That's the difference, and it's about proportionality. And everybody sees past that because we all live in reality. You want to talk about product of your environment? People that live in New York, Chicago, LA, we live in reality. We live in this environment, and we see what it's like. And the threat, the danger, in terms of probability, it's not even comparable. And I would say this, to your point. If you're in a high school and truly, if you see a white person who looks like a little autistic, he's got the SSRI stare and he reaches for a backpack, people joke and say, run. Similarly, if you see a jalopy pulling up with a bunch of black people in it and they got their pants around the ankles, you're going to run also. And I'm saying the same thing. The difference is the latter happens much more often. It's much more common. You know, in Chicago, there's like 10,000 carjackings and car thefts every day. It's in the thousands. It happens all the time. How many mass shootings committed by autistic SSRI white people? I don't even know. I mean, it's probably in the single digits in the last decade in the city. That's the difference, and everybody knows that. But you're really just trying to carry water for liberal ideology. It's an ideological position.
I'm really not. I can absolutely say, yes, there is way too much black on black crime, for example, involving guns in Chicago.
And black on white also.
Yes, but there is way too much gun violence in Chicago. Right? I mean, it's indisputable. I've got no problem saying that. The difference is I don't then lead myself into a thought process where I have to avoid all black.
He said, you've done time. 99% of time inmates are just uneducated and undiagnosed with their mental illness or just dumbasses who got stuck in the judicial system and never learned because they were raised because they never learned. Wait, hold on. I read that wrong. And never learned because they were raised right or educated. They weren't, I would assume, is what you're trying to say. Fair. Yeah. Yeah, but that is true in the sense of they kind of just get in this loop of let me go get free food because I can go to jail or prison, do time, get food, have a job there, have a routine, right? And then when they get out, they just commit a crime and then they can go back and work off taxes. Basically, it's just us paying this endless loop of that for them to just commit crime. It's the biggest idiot. It's the biggest idiots, man. I tell you, that's why they do it by color. Judge a man by his color instead of qualifies its ignorance. Qualities is ignorance. Takes a fool, honestly, to fall for that. Well, at the end of the day, I do think us having to sit here and talk about race for a whole 2-minute podcast, it is our 2-hour podcast, and like his takes about why he's racist and this, that, and the other is just, it's honestly like, oh my gosh, why do we have to sit here and even talk about this? But when they do commit some of the crime, it is valid to talk about it. Or it's like the border situation. There should be no doubt that we have a border. We're getting rid of illegals because we look at all the other countries that actually are not allowing certain people in, getting rid of, deporting, etc., etc. They have a border structure, and the fact that we have to talk about it is stupid. Or abortions. Abortions is another one that is stupid. Like, oh, well, my body, my choice. I don't care about that. How can we help progress? How can we help progress the nation? Where do we have to? We're at here, right? These are the core problems. I get it, but where do we need to be when it hits 2035? Where do we need to be when it hits this? What should our population look like? What should we be educating the children about? Etc., etc.
black people in case they shoot me. And you've already conceded that you are a racist. So when people hear you then say, I don't want to be living anywhere near black people, they already have heard you say, I'm a racist. So they assume you're doing that because of people's skin color. I don't think you would probably dispute that, right?
Well, you're separating two different things. The monologue, when I said I don't want to live around black people, that was after Irina Zarutska got shot. And it's true. I mean, they are a largely in this city, in Chicago, the South Side, the West Side, huge criminal population. And I don't want to live anywhere near it. And I do. I want to live in a white neighborhood. I think that that's extremely desirable. And I think even black people.
Again, Nick, you're perfectly entitled to that view. But when you have obviously prefaced all this by saying, I am a racist, unashamedly.
Yeah.
A lot of it is common sense. Majority of this country lacks common sense, and the government loves that. They don't want us to be strong. The strongest this country was, it was after 9/11. We were racist. Wait. The strongest this country was when after 9/11. We were racist towards only Muslims, and the government needed us to be divided again. So they elected a black president and brought racism back. Dude, you might be cooking, but was it the strongest back in 9/11? Because I thought it was like baby boomers. That was like the strongest time. And if you think about, I like this because it compares to marketing, right? And when you're marketing, you're trying to target the most average person, right? You're trying to, how do I say this? Target your ideal audience. So if you're a contractor, you're trying to get homeowners that, every single homeowner that you can, but they're trying to work on their home, right? And so I guess it makes sense why they would talk about it, because it's good for marketing. I'd be curious to see. I mean, economically, I think it was the best in the baby boomers. People were buying a lot of houses. I don't ever think we'll go back to that though. Patriotism. Why is it? I'd say yes. Most young men in World War II tried to avoid the draft. Well, yeah, they were at fear of losing their life. And, I mean, I think I'd love to see what it's like nowadays. Like, if people got drafted, would they try to avoid it? Oh, I don't want to fight your war. That's what they would probably say. Maybe it's just the liberal people that would avoid it. Or, there has to be some statistics out there, drop about, like, people that voted on the left didn't refuse to go into service, and people on the right just went in, or something along those lines. Because that would be how I'd measure it. Who did you vote for? Did you actually attend? There will never be another draft in our country's life. You think so? Why do you think that?
Then people will assume that all your thought processes about all of these issues are driven by an aversion to people based on their skin color, which is the purest personification of racism.
Well, it's not an aversion. I would say it's the opposite. I like my own people. My own people are familiar to me, and I think that's true across the board. I think that people seek out other people that are like themselves, and every other group does this, whether it's blacks, Hispanics, Asians. You know, I get a lot of attacks when I talk about that I'm against interracial marriage. And what's funny is that every other group is against interracial or interethnic marriage. Jews, Chinese,
you're the product of an
Hispanics.
interracial marriage.
Yeah, I mean, that's debatable.
Not
Let's say
really.
for the sake
Not
of argument,
really.
sure.
No, you're the product of an interracial marriage, and your father is part Mexican. You're literally,
For the sake of
you're
argument,
literally
we
the
could
very
say sure.
person you've just told me you want to avoid.
What race is Hispanic? Is that a race?
Well, what do you think it is?
I'm asking you, what race is Hispanic?
Hispanic, of course it's a race. It's called Hispanic.
What do you say? If we ever have to come out and say we need soldiers, we show that our weakness. Well, that is true, but at the same time, it is like 40 chest. But then it shows your dedication too. you're like, you're willing to sacrifice, draft out your normal citizens. War would end before the draft was even announced. Fair. I wonder how they would measure that. But you do bring up a valid point.
It's a mix between two races. It's a mix between indigenous Americans and Europeans.
Though, is it? It's not white.
Well, apparently you're more of a racial purist than me. You got like
not
a
really. You just keep saying you only want to live in a
white
neighborhood, but you're literally from a mixed race background yourself. You've literally got Mexican blood.
I know, and I live in a non-white neighborhood too. I'm trying to get out of here though, but I'm trying to get out. But here's the thing.
Do you have any non-white? Do you have any non-white friends? Genuine question.
Most of my friends are non-white. Most of my friends are not, and non-white people love my show.
How many are black? How many of your friends are black?
Many of them, like at least a dozen.
Wow.
Ye being one who you know, Sneeko being another who you also know.
Yeah. So how do they feel when you say you just want to be away from any black people, walk away from them?
Well, you know what Ye told me? I'll tell you verbatim what he said. That it doesn't come from a place of, and you use the word.
He cut it out. No, bro, he cut it out. Oh my gosh.
That's the first thing I'll actually dispute.
Dude, that sucks. Okay, let me play the full clip. Hold on, because somebody sent me the full clip. Let me go over here.
Percentage of white people are school shooters? And what proportion
I'm curious. Should
school shootings? Well, you know what Ye told me? I'll tell
you. Here it is.
Verbatim what he said. So you use the N-word. I said, yeah. He goes, well, when niggas are being niggas. I said, so true.
So true. Why did he cut that? Damn. I can't believe he cut that out.
Okay.
It's not an aversion on the basis of skin color, because that would seem to suggest it's like a stubborn, irrational bigotry. I don't consider myself a bigot. I consider myself a racial realist. I'm realistic about how the races are, and I speak provocatively about it. And I speak provocatively about our tribalistic instincts and tendencies as human beings. And I'm not a liberal ideologue that says that over time and with enough education, we're all going to see this great brotherhood where we're colorblind and everybody's the same. You know, I don't think that's ever going away. I think that race is real. It's not just skin deep. It matters to us and it matters to each other. And black people know that, and Hispanics know that, and Asians know that, and people like me that have partial Mexican ancestry, we know that too. And I think on that basis, we can have mutual respect and understanding, not aversion based on skin color.
The reason I use the word aversion is you literally said that you should walk the other way if you see black people. That is an aversion to black people based on their skin color.
No, that's called economy of information. That's economy of information. That's safety. And I said in the same monologue, if you watch it, it's like, I feel sorry. The problem is you clip the 10 seconds. I don't know if you watched the whole show, but in that monologue, I said, most black people are not violent or criminals. I said, and it's unfortunate that we're going to offend them when we turn and walk the other way. I said, but the problem is we don't know. We can't tell. And someone like Irina Zarutska, she sat down in front of a black man with her headphones in and wasn't paying attention because she was being a good liberal and said, I'm not uncomfortable by this. I'm progressive. Then she got stabbed in the neck. And I said, it's unfortunate that you would have to sit behind the black man to be safe. And if he's not violent or schizophrenic, he might be offended by that. I said, but I would rather offend him than die.
How many deranged white men have committed atrocious acts of murder in the last 10 years in America?
Proportionally far fewer. Fewer.
How many? Do you know how many?
You have a research team. You pull it up.
I mean, you're very big on, you're obviously extremely exercised by that one story, which was horrific for the record, absolutely horrific, and should never have happened. The person who perpetrated that evil act had a string of previous offences and should have been picked up more, and it should have been amplified more. I completely concur with all of that. But I just suspect you have no idea how many white people have committed similar crimes, do you?
No, because I know it's far fewer from experience. Because it's like you said. Well, and hang on, and I would add to that, you know, Irina Zarutska wasn't the first one. That was also after Austin Metcalf was killed in Texas.
Sure.
After Carmelo
how many
Anthony
times has it been perpetrated by white people?
Well, hang on, let me finish my point.
But you're implying that white people don't do this. And my point to you, Nick Fuentes, is of course,
I never said white people don't do it.
Of course, deranged white people commit heinous acts. But you don't either know.
No disagreement.
You neither know nor care, or maybe both. Maybe you do know but don't care. You only seem to be focused on black people who commit crimes. And again, if you hadn't prefaced the whole debate about racism by openly conceding you are a racist, I could read other connotations into what you've been saying. But once you've said, I'm a racist, and then you only talk about black crime, I think people can watch this and they can say, yeah, he is. He's a racist. And everything that he says about crime is driven through the prism of being a racist who judges people according to their skin color.
Well, it's funny because it's quite on the contrary. And I said this in a similar monologue. You know, the problem is not that I wake up and I walk down the street and I see someone that doesn't look like me and it makes me angry. The problem is there's a pattern of behavior.
And I've met those people.
Blacks in America.
I've met those people that sit there. They sit there and it will make them angry seeing like a black person walk down the street. And I'm just like, bro, how could you go through life worrying about this? You're literally sitting with, you're in debt. You have a mediocre job, and you're sitting there worrying about there's a black person walking down the street, and then they're in these forums all freaking day. They're in these forums, typing on the internet, Reddit, whatever, and they're just like, oh my gosh, it's going to be the end of the world. Some event happens, right? Some stupid, like not stupid, but like Charlie Kirk dying, right? Then they're like, oh, this is going to spark civil war. And then you wait, civil war doesn't even happen.
Become narcissistic. And they become narcissistic because they've been told they're victims of racism, they're victims of slavery. They've been told, really, there's no accountability. If they're rude, if they're inconsiderate, if they're criminal, they are told that they have no agency for their actions. They're being told, if you act in this way, it's because the white man made you that way. It's because the system's rigged against you. And so we have been telling black people this for a generation, and now there's no rules. Now they go, and what we hate to see as decent people, not even as white people, but decent people, even black people too, what we hate to see is rudeness, obnoxiousness, inconsideration, criminality, violence. And that's that pattern of behavior that we see all over social media, on
so
the
just to be clear,
footage,
you don't like black people who play the victim and are rude. Is that your position?
I don't like that pattern of behavior.
And who are narcissists?
I see where this is going.
Yeah, you're ahead of me.
Turn this around on
you're
me.
ahead of me, aren't you? Because when I said, what black friends have you got? You said,
I am kind of black, aren't I?
No, not that. You said, I'm not saying you. I'm just saying your choice of black friend is Ye, who is arguably the #1 black victimhood narcissist in America. Do you understand the problem? So he's your friend. He's one of the very few black people you want to be associated with, but he's the epitome of what you just said you abhor about narcissistic black people.
I disagree. I disagree with you, and I'll tell you why. Because Ye, if you've ever met him in real life...
I have, yeah.
Okay, well, then you know. He's nothing but polite, considerate.
He seemed very rude to me the last 2 times I interviewed him. He's a supreme narcissist.
He's so butthurt. He's butthurt about that right now.
And he's also...
you keep interrupting me. You're very rude. Are you black?
I
You're being very rude by
interrupting. You got so...
I do want to finish my point. I do want to finish my point about Ye. He is a guy who, when I was with him, wanted to make sure that everybody was heard. Everybody felt included. He's actually a very soft-spoken guy, very polite, and by the way, not violent. When you look at all the rappers that are in the music game, many of them, especially from Chicago, drill rap, they're talking about killing people, shooting people, they gangbang. He notably, if you know about him, he got his start because he was a nerd. He wore a backpack and a polo, and he wasn't a gangbanger. He rapped about his feelings and girls and his dreams and his ambitions. So no, by the way, he would tell me all the time, he doesn't even feel black. They make him feel not black because he doesn't do those things, because he's soft-spoken, because he's artistic, because he's a bit of a nerd or likes fashion. So I would disagree. He's actually not like that at all.
Okay.
We're talking
but it is still a good comparison to Piers is making, that lately, like, he's been under this victim mentality. But I think he has a valid reason to be under this victim mentality. And... in the sense of they've taken his children, they've taken a lot of his money, you know, billions of dollars from him. And this is where it's like you kind of have to come to your own conclusion, what you said earlier, Jim, about how at the end of the day, it's just like a fool's game, right? You're judging somebody by their color, and they could just be uneducated. They could have undiagnosed mental health issues, et cetera, et cetera.
A Hitler-loving anti-Semite. And we're going to take a little commercial break here, and we're going to come back and talk about anti-Semitism and your views. Answered emphatically that you don't hate all Jews. Is that correct? That's your position?
Yes.
Okay. So I want to play you this clip.
Well, I don't hate any Jews. Let me just amend that. I don't hate any Jews.
Okay. Let's play this clip.
The reason I've had it is because
My opposition to world Jewry and Israel is rooted in absolute, uncontestable fact. We have the truth on our side. That's why we're winning, because we are telling the truth about the historical antagonism between Jews and Europeans, between Jews and Christians. The theological, historical, racial, cultural, and political antagonisms between organized Jewry and the Christians, organized Jewry and Europeans. And the reason that we are winning that argument is because it's real, it's true. I can prove it, I can show you, I can name the names, I can show you the paper trail, the money. That is why we're winning. That is why all of this is raising the consciousness.
When you say you have this opposition to world Jewry, I mean, it's one thing to criticize, for example, the Israeli government over what it's been doing in Gaza.
Dude, does he not realize that they have a freaking meeting every couple of years? Oh my gosh. They have a couple of meetings every couple of years called, like the current state of the I forget how to pronounce it, man. Let me go back so I can figure out.
This is raising the consciousness.
When you say you have this opposition to world Jewry...
Jewry. I can't pronounce... dude, I'm lacking. Jewry? There we go. I hit it on the money. They have these meetings, and they're literally called current state of the world Jewry. I think he's probably going to mention that.
It's one thing to criticize, for example, the Israeli government over what it's been doing in Gaza. I've done that myself. When you talk about world Jewry, I presume you're talking about the 15 million Jews in the world, and you are opposed to them. How does that square with your position that you don't hate any Jews?
Well, do you take issue with my use of the term world Jewry?
Well, what do you mean by that?
Or do you take issue with it? Do you have a problem with that?
Clarify what you mean by it.
Well, it's funny you bring that up. The gaslighting's crazy because I use that expression on my show all the time. I say organized Jewry, world Jewry. And do you know that for like 30 years, the World Jewish Congress has an annual keynote called the State of World Jewry? Barry Weiss has given it.
I told you.
Look it up. It's on YouTube. She gives the State of World Jewry address.
But Nick, what do you mean by it?
I mean, you have to talk about, there's a concept of Jewish peoplehood. It's the sense that they are part of a common nationality, a common tribe, a common people. And so where they reside in Israel, the United States, or Europe, or elsewhere, they see each other above, or maybe on a different level, alongside their nationality, their state, wherever they reside. If they're in Germany, France, the United States, they see themselves as part of a transnational nation, of an international nation. The Jews in America, the Jews in Israel, they identify as Israeli or American, but they also have something in common. They identify as part of a common nation, which I would say there's a world Jewish population. It's world Jewry. And world Jewry has representatives. There is such a thing as the World Jewish Congress, where they actually elect, it's democratic, all the local Jewish organizations elect representatives to represent proportionally the Jewish population in their area at the World Jewish Congress. And it's sort of like Davos. It's like the World Economic Forum, but it's exclusively for members of the Jewish nation that exists across the world. And so that's a real thing. And I didn't make that up, and that didn't come from 4chan. It's like I said in that clip.
I think that we got some good takes from Nick here, and I don't think we need to continue watching because it's just going over. I don't know if there's any more viral moments in here. If there is, let me know. We'll react to them.